pet peeves, man. Like I want to stay on this bulking thing, right? You have certain influencers, right? And who are jacked out of their minds, and they have a big training age, maybe like they've been for 15 years, and they've gone through bulks, man. They've gone through yearly, some bulks in 2 years, big stretches, and they'll come on screen. They'll come on screen 15 years later, jacked out of their minds, and they're like, you know what, man? Like the bulking, like it was just so excessive, man, and it's just not necessary, man. So it's like, okay, well, so what? We're supposed to maintain? Like you're huge now, and like you're gonna discredit the bulks. And I understand it as a natural. I don't want to put ceilings on anybody, but maybe after a certain point, I can understand that maybe it will start to get a little slower because you can only put on. But I don't want to put a ceiling on someone, because now in the next episode when we talk about the naturals, like there's naturals popping out of everywhere who are just massive, and so I'm not putting ceilings on anybody, who knows at this point what we could put on naturally, with the information we have and like anyways. So I'm never gonna try to do that to someone, but at the same time, some of these influencers, they'll downplay it and they'll be like, like it just wasn't worth it. Like maybe it's not worth it for you right now as like a 35-year-old guy, but like you definitely did something right, man, to look like that naturally.
That's it.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think that a lot of it is that it may be down to there's a lack of acknowledgement that they've actually, of how much they've done themselves to get where they were. Because they may be like, oh yeah, I did this like crazy bulk, I put on so much fat mass, and when they've cut back down, they don't actually realize that they've gained a lot of progress. Or it's been so gradual over time, they've been doing it so long that ultimately it just kind of, it's never dawned on them what they did to get where they are, other than consistent training for X amount of time. It's not dawned on them that they've gone through X amount of bulking phases, X amount of dieting phases, and so on and so forth. So, I find, especially with myself, I kind of fall a little bit down that rabbit hole, in the sense of I've kind of done bulks in the past where I feel like I've gained too much overall body mass, but they do reflect on your physique when you cut back down. The only issue that I've ever had is that if I'm cutting back down for competition, I've realized that I've not left myself enough time to take off everything that I've gained in relation to the body fat, which means I then have to slightly rush to get down to stage condition or near stage condition, which then puts that muscle mass at risk again. So especially as a natural, the main thing is that you need, the biggest factor in anything as a natural is time. Because if you've not left yourself an appropriate amount of time to gain any muscle mass, or let's say you go after let's say you've done a dieting phase and your hormones are a little bit not at optimal ranges or kind of not at normal ranges, you need enough time to allow yourself to gain size and mass at an appropriate rate to then increase your performance, increase your strength, increase your muscle mass, before then leaving enough time for you to cut back down again. If you rush either process, you're going to gain body fat too fast. You're going to be in a pretty sticky situation when it comes to coming back down. And then on the way back down, if you don't leave yourself enough time, you're putting that lean tissue that you've spent so much hard effort and time building, you're going to put that in jeopardy of being lost again, because you've got to diet down too fast. And that's the important thing as being natural. With being natural is that we don't have the PEDs, the anabolics, to maintain or even gain muscle mass when we are in a deficit. We got to hold on to what we got. There may be a little bit of a recomp effect part of the way into the diet where you think, okay, protein's increased. Strength continues to increase for a very short period. Strength in relation to body weight could go up when it comes to, suddenly you've lost 3-4 kilos of fat mass and you're really sick at pull-ups, which is awesome. I love that stage, because you find lose a little bit of body fat and you're like, shit, my weighted pull-ups have gone up. So relative to body weight, it can go up. But the main thing is all we're doing is trying to sustain the level of muscle mass that we've spent so long gaining when we come down. So it's time either way. It's, everything comes down to that element.
Especially at a high training age,
Oh, for sure. 100%.
Especially that. So let's transition into body fat, right? So when you're working with clients, for instance, I know there's different ways to skin a cat, but like, and some individuals say like, look, if it's not a DEXA, it's worthless. And some even say if it is a DEXA, it's still not even that accurate. So like, I still like to think that there's still, you still want to have some type of measure, you know?
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be perfect, but like, what are you using at the moment, if you are using anything?
So I'm one to kind of like, I've got access to a DEXA like scale at my gym, so it's a pretty powerful body fat measurement scale. But again, I've got trust issues when it comes to those kind of things. So, but the main thing that I do is that I'll measure myself a couple of times a year on that. If I'm like peak bulk, halfway through a dieting phase, end of the dieting phase, you know, all of those kind of things, I'll measure it just out of kind of curiosity. But my main thing is measurements and weight. You know, are certain things going up faster than others? Are certain areas gaining size more than others? If my waist is staying pretty much the same and I'm gaining size elsewhere, the likeliness is it may be a little bit of body fat, but it's going to be muscle mass as well. It's very rare now in kind of at the stage I am as a natural competitor. You'll be lucky if I gain an extra kilo stepping on stage every year or even every 2 years. That's the kind of unfortunate stage I'm in because I'm an advanced trainee. We're not going to gain that much. If you take a 1 year off season or a 2 year off season, you're not really likely to gain more than a couple of kilos at absolute best. And that's just the reality of it. So for myself, it's all about the scales and my gym performance ultimately. So I measure myself every day because again, I take it with a pinch of salt. I'm not like, oh, I weigh heavier, I weigh lighter. I'm like, okay, well, what's this down to? I kind of use it almost as an indicator of how my digestive system is working, whether there's any digestive stress, whether I'm kind of bloated, I'm weighing more. What is it due to? Was it certain meals I've had? How I feel after certain meals, whether I feel tighter and so on and so forth. But a lot of it in reality, as long as you've got certain measurements that you do. So for me, it's consistently the scales and my lifts in the gym. Are they progressing? How much is my body weight going up over time? And how much of my resistance training, how much is the actual load that I'm lifting going up over time? If those two factors are in control, I couldn't give a shit about my body fat because I know it's staying within that threshold that I like it to be in. And that's where my performance is best, as we kind of said earlier. And that's just the way I like it to be. I like to be in control of certain variables, but in reality, I don't really care too much about my body fat. Even in competition the past few years, we go based on how our condition looks. We're not going to go down. You will get to a point where in reality, if you were to measure yourself with calipers, you're talking like a couple of millimeters, and it's going to come up with a pretty inaccurate calculation of your body fat anyway. It will say you're 4 or 5% when you're probably 6, 7, because that's just what the stage that we get to when it comes to condition anyway for stage.
Right. Muscle mass is small. It's a long journey, man. Naturally, man.
Yeah.
People forget that muscle doesn't come in pounds, man. It comes in grams.
That's it. But it's those grams that lift the extra kilos in the gym.
Right.
It's not the pound. You know, if you've got an extra pound of muscle, you could have an extra 10 kilos on a lift. So it just depends, doesn't it? And that's the thing. As long as we're in control of those really, really small factors, even if it's as simple as just weighing yourself a couple of times a week, but taking it with a pinch of salt, not like, oh, I'm gaining weight too fast. Look at what the weekly or monthly average of you gaining that weight is, as opposed to, oh, I'm weighing 2 kilos heavier today. Well, okay, well, you had a big meal last night. You've not had time to digest it. There's little things like that. But yeah, I think that's the important thing, is just to be in control of a few variables at least, because I'm in control of my nutrition. That comes naturally to me. You know, I can be flexible. I'm pretty good at, call it guesstimating, as it were. If I know roughly how much your average chicken breast weighs, I know roughly how much, you know, a certain amount of rice is going to be in relation to cups and size and stuff like that. So I don't have to track all the time, but when I feel like it's getting out of hand, then I start to track for a few days, get back on it, consistently same stuff, make sure my weight is moving the right direction at an appropriate rate, and then flexible, relax. You know I'm getting the amount of protein that I need in. I know I'm getting the amount of carbohydrates and fats, give or take, but equally so, that's what keeps my satiety and my hunger levels on a good level. I find sometimes cramming in too much food, you can lose your appetite very, very quickly.
Yeah, big time. All right. No, I'm just in a good mood, honestly. I don't even know I'm laughing, man.
That's what I like to hear.
Get those days like that, man. Let's dive more into the food specifics, man. And I know that there's obviously more than one way to skin a cat with these types of questions, but sometimes it's just nice to ask these types of questions. Like, someone's feeling tired, and all factors aside of like, let's just say the stress is managed, sleep is on point. When it comes to the food, solely the food, what if you give me three, for example, what are three foods, man, that just boost your energy?
I mean, from a carbohydrate standpoint, the obvious is going to be your rice, your potatoes, your sweet potatoes. Pasta, I'm not as much of a fan of when it comes to a cleaner energy source. I believe it's a lot harder to digest than your rices and stuff like that. But ultimately, rice variations
And
tend
potatoes.
to potatoes for me because I like the volume at the end of the day. I like pretty much every lunchtime. It's not often I have rice unless I'm in a kind of dieting phase, but even then I lean towards potatoes because you just get more for the amount, and stick them in the air fryer. They come out tasting great. It's all good. Rice can get a little bit samey and a little bit boring, but undoubtedly it is one of the best sources of energy out there when it comes to just a clean carbohydrate.
I agree, man. And it's funny because me having like Mediterranean roots, the quarter Maltese that's in me, like I guess we just love pasta,
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And like I find that like if I'm being, and the thing is like after every year, every couple of years, you gotta do reevaluations. When I was like 21, I could eat like massive bowls of pasta, go right to the gym, no problem. But now a couple of years later, it's like I feel tired, man. I feel like knocking out on the couch if I eat too much pasta. So it's like I have to weigh it accordingly. If I have like, for example, like no more than like 200 grams, you know, it has to be like, it can't be more than that. Like I feel like I'm too tired after that. But
That's it.
what I'm trying to say is that
It just takes a lot of digestion, doesn't it?
it does, yeah. And like when I look at a lot of these lifters, their full day of eating, like most of the carbs tend to be on the rice potato side. The pasta's still there, but like if we're talking about the dominance, sweet potatoes, regular potatoes, variations of rice. And
Yeah.
like you connect certain dots, you're like, man, like my performance is so much higher with just potatoes is like my main, like right now my main one is like sweet potatoes and rice. Like those are the pasta still comes along. I'm still gonna have a bit every day, but I'm definitely not eating it more than once a day. And if I do, it's not a massive bowl, Rodney Coleman bowl, you know what I'm saying?
That's it. And you come to the point where you've got people have taken it to that new extreme of the whole cream of rice for breakfast. Is that a thing over there?
Nah.
No, so like
Not
cream
for me
rice,
at least.
it's pretty much it's kind of like having oats for breakfast, but cream of rice is kind of like a little bit more smooth, a little bit more baby food like when it comes to like texture. So it's kind of like if you're going to have a bowl of oats can be like a little bit lumpy and stuff, and you've got a little bit more texture to it. Cream of rice is kind of like a slightly more, it's creamy and thin. So it's kind of like,
Right.
have you ever had rice pudding?
Yeah, I've tried it once. Yeah, it was given to me by yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that, but it's almost like it's almost thinner. It's not as lumpy and stuff like that. But people start to have like a lot of, especially in the bodybuilding community and the kind of the optimal crowd, obviously, have kind of gone down the route of like cream of rice for breakfast with some protein powder or whatever, and then it'll be rice for lunch, rice for dinner, or potatoes and stuff like that. But it's all clean carb sources. I mean, I can't say I'm as clean as that for breakfast. Like from a satiety standpoint, I'm leaning more towards things like the breads, bagels and stuff, but I know it's not as much of a clean energy source for me, but it's a lot more calorie dense. It enables me to get in the amount of calories that I need because it's easier for me to do that than have, 3 bowls of cereal or however much oats and stuff. And quite frankly, I've got a lot less time in the mornings if I'm going out and I'm training a one-to-one client. I can make a bagel pretty quickly. I can't, making oats and letting them cool down and stuff like that. It's not in my lifestyle. I don't have the time sometimes. If I've got to go out to a client and I've got like limited amount of time, I will lean towards more calorie dense things. I don't want to go
Right.
to the gym training a client feeling heavy and bloated and stuff after piling down loads of oats and stuff. So, you've got to think about lifestyle as well, haven't you, when it comes to your carbohydrate source as well. It's got whatever fits, but so you've got to kind of like take a little bit of the optimal side of things, but also take a little bit of the what can I get in conveniently? What's gonna fit?
Yeah, what's gonna taste good too, like you just said.
Yeah, that's it. If you've not got the appetite for whatever you're eating, then you're going to lose your appetite very quickly as a whole, because if you're force feeding foods that aren't palatable to you,
Yeah,
then
I think that's a big aspect right there. It's in the training world, there's this expression that good training is boring training. You ever hear someone say that?
yeah,
And I understand, like it with a lot of these questions we're going over, man. It's a lot of it falls in the gray zone. If we're really seeing the patterns here.
yeah,
It's like my channel should be called like gray zone fitness or something, because I'm always in that gray zone. I'm never like yes or no. It's always, but we know like some of it there has to be some type of regiment, like AKA the meat and potatoes, the big lifts, like you're saying, and then some of it's like a kid in the candy store. You're doing like, it's not the end of the world if you go from like a preacher curl with easy bar to like a preacher curl with dumbbells. It's not gonna make or break your progress for the most part. But like as long as the big basics are there. I lost my train of thought, man. But yeah, so like with the nutrition, for example, yeah, people have the same type of attitude, like just eat it, suck it up, it doesn't matter. But it's like, man, if the food just tastes bad, or if it's just really boring to the point where it's just like you don't want it, you're just rolling your eyes at your next meal that's in like in the next 2.5 hours. Like, how long term are you really gonna do that for? So I'm still a big advocate. You still gotta make it taste somewhat good.
yeah,
It has to be good for sure.
yeah.
Like, good nutrition is not boring.
Yeah, I think that the main thing with that as well is like, even take for example how I do my own nutrition. I kind of like give myself some rules where if I don't allow myself, let's say one day for lunch, I don't want potatoes. I've not got the appetite for it. I don't want rice. I've not got the appetite for it. Haven't got the time to boil pasta and stuff like that. Then I'll go to the shop and I will get some kind of bread, right? Whether it's like a baguette or whatever. I won't allow myself to do that more than a few days in a row, because then I know I'll develop a new habit. And I know that energy source isn't going to be as effective as the potatoes or the rice. So every now and again, if I've not got the appetite for those kind of those better energy sources, I'll go and get something else. But in my kind of rules with myself, I still need to have that balance. I need to not let the things get out of hand. So if I kind of lean more towards bread one day, I won't let myself do it for more than 2-3 days in a row, because then that habit will go, or that habit will kind of form, and then I won't actually be able to get out of the habit because I will lose my appetite for the potatoes and the rice altogether. So I kind of almost need to I need to force myself a little bit, but also listen to, can I stomach rice today? Can I stomach potatoes today? Yeah, okay, that's cool. I have them. If I really feel like I'm forcing myself, I'll go away and then I'll come back. But if I was forcing myself all the time, I would never have it again. I would just completely chop it in. So it's a tough one. You kind of always have to have an element of discipline and balance, but you've got to allow that flexibility, because we don't like the same things every day. We have, myself and my partner, we have different meals for dinner every day. They fit the macros, we track them in advance, but we still have different meals for dinner, because it's got to be a sense of enjoyment to diet in general. You can't, especially for some of our clients that are lifestyle based, and for me, the majority of mine are lifestyle based. Those guys and girls aren't gonna be, a lot of them they've got young families. They're not going to be eating their chicken and rice while their husband or wife is cooking dinner for her or him and the kids.
Of course.
You've got to have that element of flexibility so that they still have a life outside of the gym. That what we promote in our businesses is that the gym isn't everything. We promote health, fitness, longevity, lifestyle. There's a balance between all of them. We're not just like, okay, well, you've got to be hardcore for everything. We've got to promote balance.
I think that's important, but also like, I'm gonna bring it right back to the gym quick. Like, some people say squats hurt my knees. I'm not doing squats. You haven't tried all the different variations. You haven't tried different protocols, different prep drills to be able to do that lift. So
That's it.
so they just dismiss it. And the same thing goes with food. Like, oh, I don't eat fish. It's like, but they don't have any intolerances to it.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, well, maybe try cooking in a different way. Maybe try seasoning in different. Maybe you put certain seasonings in like overnight or something.
Yeah.
Try cooking it the next day. You know what I'm saying? Let it marinate overnight, whatever the case is. And there's different ways to cook it. You might actually like it a different way. You just haven't found a way to cook it. You like it yet.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? As opposed to just piggybacking from one food to the next. Like, the basics work too for the most part for most people, but you have to have the patience to try to find how to nail it, you know?
Yeah.
But as far as like, for example, like back to this 3 example, like cutting foods, what are like some that you just, some foods that you tend to see patterns where you're like, man, these just work, man?
Oh, it's always the cleaner sources, generally speaking. I use the term clean very loosely because in my eyes, there are no dirty food and clean foods. That's too extreme. I think everything has a purpose. You know, you could say you could live off chocolate and you're not going to look great and you're not going to feel great. But ultimately, I'm not going to label it a bad food. But ultimately, it is the slightly cleaner sources, the more kind of pure food sources that are going to get you the result a lot better. They're going to give you those kind of clean cut energy. So it's going to be, like we said, the rices, the potatoes, the kind of the oats, if your digestive system allows it and stuff like that. I know obviously some people out there are intolerant to gluten or get told they're intolerant to gluten, but that's a different story. So, you know, that you've just got to kind of stick to those clean sources, the ones that you know you get decent clear cut energy from. For some people that might be bread. Their bodies may process it a lot better than others. And again, it's that individual factor that you find you as an individual or our clients as individuals are going to process different foods in different ways. They may be intolerant to certain forms of protein. They may not be intolerant to certain forms of protein. Some people agree with whey. Some people don't. Some people have got to use other things. I use a lot of collagen protein just because, you know, I digest it a little bit better. It's not as heavy on the stomach. We've just got to find that approach as an individual and find what works and what our bodies are able to process very efficiently.
Got you. I got something regarding bulking, right? So you often hear I got to bulk. But what about mini cuts during bulking cycles? You're doing a big push, you know? What's the purpose of that?
It depends how extreme you want to take it, and when it is really appropriate, because a lot of people they'll implement a mini cut because they feel bad about the way they look, not because there are any training factors that have gone down. There are not any digestive issues. There's nothing physical other than the way that they feel about themselves. However, kind of caveat to that is that if they are feeling down about the way they look, it could psychologically hinder their performance in the gym. So there is a little bit of that. You know, if they went on a mini cut that's going to be like 4 to 6 weeks, then fine. It's not likely to hinder their performance unless they're going to really, really rapidly drop their calorie intake and put themselves in quite a large deficit. But what I would say is that, go on.
My bad. I didn't say the full question. You take that versus just bulking slower. You know what I'm saying? What's the big, like, why not just bulk slower? What's the point of bulking and then you go on a 4 to 6 week mini cut and then you bulk again when you could just bulk like very slow the whole time?
Yeah. But well, I mean, yeah, there's the argument right there. The only thing I'd have to say on that is literally just listening to those markers and going, okay, even if you bulk slower, you may get to a point where you're getting a bit of digestive stress, or you're getting, you know, you may even hit a bit of a plateau, and then you would have to increase the rate of which you're or increase the actual surplus that you're in to the point where you may be getting digestive stress. You may lose your appetite. So it's only if you're thinking from an optimal standpoint of what should be done best, I think it's good to allow or be open-minded to the idea of mini cuts, but only for the right reasons. Okay. Otherwise, you're going to be it's unnecessary. If you're doing it just based on the way that you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to dial it in because I feel like I've gained a bit too much body fat. Well, what's your performance saying? You know, what's your digestive kind of patterns saying? Are you just feeling shit about the way you look, or are you performing shit? That's so all. Would
you categorize that as like a deload, but for bulking?
Yeah, in theory, obviously, you know, a deload could be a week or two, and the equivalent for a mini cut could be 4, 6, maybe 8 weeks. But anything after that, you're pretty much full on cutting.
There you go.
That's the thing. It depends. Like the people that take it to that next level of kind of, you know, what are you really achieving are the ones that are, they're going to say, oh, I'm going to go on a bulk. They'll eat anything and everything for like 3 months. And then they'll say they're going to do a mini cut and they'll cut for like 2 months. And you're like, okay, well, in reality, you've only had one productive month within that
Right.
time that you've been in a decent range. Like, what's the point in eating anything and everything to the point that you've lost your appetite and then you have to suddenly mini cut again? There's like I said before, there's an appropriate rate of gain where the likeliness is you're less likely to lose your appetite, your strength is going to go up gradually, your body fat levels are going to go up gradually, and your weight is going to go up at an appropriate rate. But if you surpass that, the likeliness is some of those other factors are going to start to hinder. You might end up like, because of the digestive stress or the sheer volume of food you're taking in, it's going to, or even the level of body fat that you're going to, that you've obtained in a very short period of time, your sleep might start to really suck. And then that's going to affect your recovery, which is then going to affect your performance. And then it's that cycle all over again. So, you know, those are the things to kind of look at. The main thing is with absolutely everything is that you give yourself an appropriate time and you gain appropriately as opposed to unnecessarily.